Welcome to His Lordship. So excited to have you guys upon our this is a high-tech, this technology shift is futuristic. This will blow your mind. Again, welcome to His Lordship. Thank you. Welcome to His Lordship. Thank you.
Reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the president. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit, to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. But I do ask every publisher, every editor, and every newsman in the nation to re-examine his own standards and to recognize the nature of our country's peril. In time of war, the government and the press have customarily joined in an effort based largely on self-discipline to
I just want this is a replay from it's 1 year old, and this is from Why You Tripping Off Me's page, and yeah, this is 1 year old, and this is the beginning is Kennedy's speech, the speech that I personally feel that he what led to his murder because of this speech, because he was going to crack down on secret societies like, you know, the Masons and stuff like that. And he was also going to reveal anything that he knew about UFOs. And he thought that secret societies was really running the nation and bringing the nation down. And America wasn't built on that. Also, some people might have felt he was somewhat of a hypocrite because he came into money through his family. His family was involved in the liquor trade, and when it was, you know, both legal and illegal, and still get paid off of certain types of liquor. But anyway, I thought this would make sense now. Maybe it didn't make sense a year ago when I did this story, but this book is very old. All right, this book was made before television was invented, and people in places like Korea, under the dictator, actually live in this type of fear, and they live in this type of situation. But then you have places like Manhattan, and you have places like China, where you can't even urinate on the side of a building, on the side of your car. I mean, you shouldn't do that, but I'm just saying, you can't do nothing that's not on camera in Manhattan or China. Okay? And I just want to say thank everybody who you half in and half out. That's cool. I just want to thank anybody that's, you know, checking this out. I think this is one of those things that you can watch while on the couch, while in bed, you know, chilling, and you semi-focus on it, but then you, after about 20 minutes, you go, wait a minute. Damn, this is some shit. So what I did was I started with Kennedy's speech. It's still going on. I just got it on pause. And then it's going to go into the book, 1984, if there's anybody still left that haven't read that, or anybody who may have read it a long time ago but didn't trip. 1984 is one of those books you can't put down. And the whole book is a metaphor. You got to read between the lines. But in this book, you got to remember that the TVs were round and not square. The TVs basically, he was talking about smart TVs that wasn't even invented. So this was a smart TV. They call it a telespeak. And, you know, just being in an office and you decide to just get up and look out the window because you know the office got a nice view, but you're doing it on the office time. You're doing it on your boss's time. And then a computer says, you're not, you know, that's unauthorized. Get back to work. What are you doing? You see what I'm saying? So anyway, I'm going to let it rock. Maybe some more people will come in, but maybe people will catch the playback. I know it's late, but I'm going to do this every now and then. I'm going to take an old thing that I've done on another channel and just see if it makes more sense now. So this is going to finish with the Kennedy speech, which is very relevant even today. It's going to go into the whole book with clips from the original 1984 film that was filmed first in England. You're going to see film clips from that. And then it's going to end with me talking about the NSA, and then it's going to be over. So this is like a premiere in a way, but it's not. And I'm playing it live from YouTube from the other channel. So sit back and enjoy. And hey, I haven't watched this in a while. I don't even know what I said on this thing. I might. So it's all good for me too, you know.
Clear and present danger. The courts have held that even the privileged rights of the First Amendment must yield to the public's need for national security. Today, no war has been declared, and however fierce the struggle may be, it may never be declared in the traditional fashion. Our way of life is under attack. Those who make themselves our enemy are advancing around the globe. The survival of our friends is in danger, and yet no war has been declared. No borders have been crossed by marching troops. No missiles have been fired. If the press is awaiting a declaration of war before it imposes the self-discipline of combat conditions, then I can only say that no war ever posed a greater threat to our security. If you are awaiting a finding of clear and present danger, then I can only say that the danger has never been more clear, and its presence has never been more imminent. It requires a change in outlook, a change in tactics, a change in missions by the government, by the people, by every businessman or labor leader, and by every newspaper. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. It conducts the Cold War, in short, with a wartime discipline no democracy would ever hope or wish to match. Nevertheless, every democracy recognizes the necessary restraints of national security. And the question remains whether those restraints need to be more strictly observed if we are to oppose this kind of attack as well as outright invasion.
What's up? This is Why You Tripping Off Me in the building. I think there's some things going on this evening. Might be some sports or whatnot. So if you catch this now, you can catch it later. It is all good. But I will not repeat myself during this show. During this show, I'm not going to go back. I'm just going to keep going forward. I'm going to say what I got to say, get in, get out, but I'm not going to refresh or rehash. You would just have to check out the replay. Today's topic is about the book 1984, George Orwell's Big Brother. I did mention Big Brother before and while I was live, stuff like that. And I noticed in the chat room that a couple of people, or at least one, said, "Who is Big Brother?" And I was surprised they didn't catch that reference. But the book is 70 years old, but people still come across that book either in school or something like that, mostly in school. My son just got through watching an animated movie that was basically, it was Animal Farm but told in animation. So yes, George Orwell wrote Animal Farm, if you're familiar with that. And then he wrote 1984, which was his claim to fame. Also, his book, believe it or not, when the President Trump was inaugurated, the book sale of 1984 went up 9,000%. And the copyright is, this happened right when the copyright became public domain. So that's interesting so now they're going to republish, I think, 75,000 copies as a physical book. So that's that's something for you to, food for thought. If you want to read this book or get the PDF or listen to the audio version of this book is 10 hours. So you pick your poison, you know what I'm saying? But now, a lot of people do know about this book, so I'm going to get this part out the way. Basically, the plot and the summary, and then we're going to get into each character and stuff like that. Now, 1984 is set in a possible future in which the world has been ravaged by war, and hungry and fearful citizens must pledge allegiance to a paranoid regime that keeps them ignorant through misinformation. Okay? Winston Smith, the main character of the novel, lives in London, though England is now called Airstrip 1, and Airstrip 1 is part of a large superstate called Oceania, which comprise of all of Britain, Iceland, Australia, and New Zealand, and as well as the Americas in Southern Africa. Now, 1984 was written in 1948 during a period of time where they definitely, if they did have TVs, it definitely wasn't flat screens. They didn't have TVs, and this was post-nuclear war. There was, this is science fiction, but even though the book was written in 1948, in the story there was a nuclear war in the 60s. They had this thing called I forgot what it's called, but it was like a television, but it was oval shape, and it was flat, and it had a monitor that can see you, and you can see the TV, and it can see you, but it wasn't called it was called like a tele talk or a tele, and that's messed up because that's a very important to the story, but it'll come to me later. But it's called basically it's a talking TV. It's called a tele talk or something like that. So anyway, it's a two-way television set, but it wasn't square. It was oval shape, and they can see you as clear as you can see it. Because this is old school sci-fi. Back then, they didn't realize that a camera could be the size of a needle. Today, back then, they had a round shape camera underneath the oval big screen, and it had like some kind of fluctuation going on, so you could tell that it was on at all times. Basically, you're being monitored. There was no privacy, and only certain class of people can afford these two-way television sets, and that's the people they was mainly concerned with. And most of those people work for the government. The pros, which was the lower class citizens, they didn't have to really concern themselves with that. But we'll get into the pros later. Not much will be said about them except that they're just factory workers, baby making machines, and their ignorance made their life pretty nice because of their ignorance. But anyway, in Oceania, a force called Big Brother watches and spies on people through the telescreen. That's what it's called. The telescreen. All right. Which are like TVs that transmit both ways. It does double duty, spying on the citizens and transmitting pro-party propaganda. My favorite word. Instructions and calisthenics, pro-Big Brother music, and more. So Big Brother had its own music that it broadcasts that the pros love to hear. You can catch a pro singing some of the melodies from the music they hear from Big Brother's broadcast while they're doing laundry and doing doing chores at home or at the cafe having coffee. They loved it. Anyway, the city is plastered with party slogans such as "War is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength." This doublethink is a concept that rules Oceania. Doublethink is the ability to hold on to two opposing beliefs at the same time and accepting both of them. But doublethink concepts can cancel each other out and therefore make no sense. Also, I need you to know that they have ministries, right? The Ministry of Truth, where Winston works, the main character of the story. He's in charge of the rewriting of history to align with the party, and the party decides, the party decides truth at the moment, and the Ministry of Love is in charge of the law and order, and torture, and the Ministry of Plenty is in charge of economics. So Winston's job basically is to write down history as it needs to be remembered, but not as it really is. So if the leader gives us a presidential speech and he's not going to write down that speech exactly as it was said word for word, it's going to be written down as how the party wants the speech to be remembered. Okay. Now we have several main characters in this book. And since nobody's here at the moment, we can go through these characters. Now, Winston Smith is the protagonist. And you know what's funny is most American movies is about the protagonist. Through whose eyes the story is told, Winston belongs to the outer party, yet he hates all it stands for and secretly rebels. Okay, Big Brother is the mustachioid embodiment of the party who rules Oceania and who's likely only a symbol for a totalitarian rule rather than a real person. Okay, O'Brien is a member of the inner party whom Winston instinctively follows as a man who seems to share his hatred for the party. But that's only an assumption. And you know what they say about assumptions. You know what I'm saying? Julia, a young woman and fellow hater of Big Brother with whom Winston builds a romantic relationship. Let's not forget that 1984 is actually a love story. But it's things that go on, and the things that put pressure on their relationship is what we find most interesting. Now, Emmanuel Goldstein. Emmanuel Goldstein is a former leader of the party who now leads the Brotherhood, a counter-revolutionary group against the party that may or may not actually exist. Mr. Charrington appears to be a member of the pros, or working class, who owns an antique shop in London, and from when Winston rents a room for a secret rendezvous with Julia. Okay. Now, so he got his little spot where he meets Julia for a little, a little this, a little that. Because they got tired of going out to the woods. You know what I'm saying? And, that's another story. So, Catherine is Winston's wife. Though they no longer see each other, she is so repulsed by Winston that they are unable to conceive a child. Since divorce is illegal, Catherine simply leaves Winston. The Thought Police. The Thought Police is a party branch that uses telescreens and other surveillance to report the thought crimes. All right. Mr. Persona. Mr. Persona is the ideal out-of-party member. He's Winston's neighbor and Victory Mansion and a lower-level co-worker at the Ministry of Truth. Okay? And lurkers are welcome. I don't mind talking to myself because I know it's all good on the playback. Now, Mrs. Persona is married to Mr. Persona, or Mr. Parsons. I'm sorry, I mispronounced it. Mrs. Parsons is married to Mr. Parsons and is an overworked homemaker. She is raising 2 children whom she worries are spies, likely to turn either parent into the thought police. So these 2 parents constantly have to live with the fact that their little kids are so gung-ho for Big Brother because they're in like a ROTC that they're worried about their own kids turning them into the thought police. And the children are brainwashed. They watch these TV shows, the cartoons that tells them that don't trust anybody, including your parents. If you see them acting unpatriotic, call this number. And they want to get a badge or rewarded, because whenever they do something for the party, they will be rewarded, and they love to be the children love to be the center of attention. So it gives them some kind of power. So they actually talk to their parents very disrespectful, like they are already an adult, because they got Big Brother to defend them, to reward them for anything. So they could even lie on their parents if they don't like them, or if they want to seek acknowledgement. So Sim is a creative intellect. Sim is a creative, intelligent yet orthodox member of the outer party. He is a colleague of Winston at the Ministry of Truth, who is helping to write the 11th edition of the Newspeak Dictionary. And the Newspeak Dictionary, basically, they keep coming out with a new edition over and over, and it basically, they created this library. Well, they created a dictionary of words, but every time they come out with a new issue, it has less words. They remove tons of verbs from the book, because if you don't have a word that express your situation or your needs, then those needs or situations do not exist. So if you took the word poor out the dictionary, nobody will ever feel poor again, because they don't know what poor is, and it's not in the dictionary, it's not in the language. So you'll never feel poor. Isn't that interesting? What's up, Ruby Rose? Welcome back. Long time no see, and it's cool. Check in for a second. If you don't got much time, that's fine. Feel free to catch the playback. I was just going through the characters of 1984 George Orwell book, and I'm on the last character, which is the singing prole woman. Prole is Prole, And the singing pro woman beneath Winston's rented room symbolizes the freedom of the pros, and the only hope for all society to regain is freedom. And really, many of the party workers envy the pros, even though the pros, their life is very simple. They don't even know, even the outer party don't even know what wine tastes like. Okay, they're happy with their beer, their little government music, and they're maybe playing chess and making babies. The average pro woman would have 8 to 15 kids, and they use them for the military and stuff like that. Yes, what's up, Observer? So the only thing that you guys missed was I went through the character list of 1984, and I went through the plot summary, and that's no big deal. At the very, very beginning, I played a speech by Kennedy when he was talking about secret societies, and that speech is so famous. You will when you hit the replay, you'll be able to see the beginning. So Winston Smith, he's a citizen of Oceania who works at the Ministry of Truth, but it's really the Ministry of Lies. Winston copes with his misery by writing in secret journals when the telescreen is not watching, but the telescreen is always watching. You can't even get up and walk and look out the window without them asking you why you get up and look out the window. And Winston thought that nobody saw him write in his secret journal, but Big Brother don't miss a beat. Okay? Julia slipped Winston a letter that said, "I love you." She act like that she got hurt by a piece of equipment, and when they was escorting her to the place to get looked at, she slipped Winston a note saying simple words, "I love you." But they knew that. They saw that. Big Brother saw that. This book was written when they didn't have video cameras or TVs and stuff. So this author had a very vivid imagination. George Orwell had a very vivid imagination to have that kind of insight. George Orwell, his real name is Eric Arthur Blair. All right. He considered himself a democratic socialist. He died a year after his book was published at age 46, and it was made into a film in 1984. But back in 1956, BBC made their own version, and then I think it was another American version before 1984. But the big Hollywood production was 1984. And I want to welcome everybody into the room. And what's up, 3Ts and Observer and Ruby and everybody. I'm in the zone right now. You have to excuse me. And this book is a love story. But the byproduct story, the side story, it's about censorship and surveillance. Censorship and surveillance. Keep that in mind, okay? And a lot of people say, yeah, Big Brother and Big Brother's watching you, and you know that book 1984? Well, they forget about the fact that it's a love story. And let me tell you something. I said this earlier. The sales of this book went up 9,000% when Donald Trump was inaugurated. So for some reason, citizens thought this book correlates to Donald Trump becoming president. For some odd reason, this book sales went up 9,000%, which I just find incredible. That a book that's 70 years old has regenerated more interest now, and they're going to republish 75,000 more copies. That's crazy. Winston becomes attracted to Julia at work, and Winston fears she is a member of the thought police until she slips him a love note. And then Winston and Julia falls in love and meet in a secret. They meet in secret where they believe they're unwatched. Now they used to meet out in a park somewhere because they didn't think they would have microphones and stuff out there, but they still thought the birds and stuff could be robots. The birds could be watching them. And Winston asked Julia. First of all, Winston, he married, but he was married, and him and his wife wasn't, she was repulsed by him, so she wasn't even sleeping with him, and they're not allowed to get divorced, and so she just left him. So Winston met this girl she was actually following them around too, because he used to go to this antique store, and she came in, and he thought that she was, because she was so, on the surface, she's so patriotic. I mean, she do the pep rallies, the bake sales, everything. It was nothing that made you think that she was part of the resistance of the, you know what I'm saying? It was nothing that made you think that she hated the party. So he thought that he was going to have to kill her at first until she slipped him that note. But when they started meeting out in the park, in the forest, I guess, secretly, he looked at her and said, "You've been here before, huh?" And she was like, "Yeah, I've been here before. Is that going to be a problem?" And he was like, "No." So her little hoe has been out there in the park with other members, but she said, but none of them, they were scared, and they couldn't get past what they were, they couldn't hang, basically what she was saying. So anyway, so they got tired of going to the park because they knew that eventually they would be found out there, and somebody came out there and they almost was seen. So they had to switch up. So Winston is drawn to the Revolutionary Brotherhood. He then seeks out their leader, O'Brien, who plans to share the Brotherhood manifesto. Oh, I'm sorry, O'Brien. Winston is drawn to the Brotherhood. So Winston thought O'Brien would be something in O'Brien made Winston assume that O'Brien. O'Brien would help him, like he's on the Brotherhood. So O'Brien turns out to be a member of the Thought Police, and Winston and Julia are arrested and find that their room was being watched because they got a room over in the antique store. But O'Brien acted like he was just this old lonely antique dealer whose wife had died, but he was down with the, he was basically, the Thought Police was setting them up from the very beginning. So O'Brien tortures Winston in room 101, and faced with his deepest fears, rats, Winston tells O'Brien to torture Julia instead. And it's funny because they said out in the park that they would never tell on each other. Like they would, they could torture us, they could take everything away, but they can't control our minds, and we don't have to. But as soon as they broke out with that rat, he was like, "Oh no, torture her instead." Okay, I just want to chime in right quick. This is pre-recorded, and you say this story sounds familiar. This is the book 1984 by George Orwell. Unfortunately, he died a year after writing this book, and never got to see it turned into a movie or anything like that. I will be showing clips from the original movie that was made in the 1950s, because Hollywood didn't make a movie out of the book until 1984 because they thought it was good for marketing that a book called 1984 should be made in 1984, just like Blade Runner was supposed to be 2017. So when 2017 came, they made another Blade Runner, which is good for business. Plus, they knew Americans, most Americans, based on our indoctrination, wouldn't pick up on the messages in the book 1984. And reason why it was called 1984 for two reasons. One of them, that was their futuristic date. Like for us, 2001 would have been our futuristic date. That's why they had a movie called Space 2001 in 1968, because 2001 seemed so far away. So for 1948, 1984 was far away. That was like their 2000, their millennium, and also it was 1984 in reverse. And I think George Orwell's did have some ties in the government. He worked within the government but quit. And I think he wanted to warn the public about things to come in the future. And the only way he could do it is put it in a science fiction love story. That's the best way to describe it. But in real life, in real times, oh, you saw the movie before? The book is great too. I don't know. You know what? I must say, the movie did the book justice. It was to the point. Like a lot of books turned into movies, there's a lot of things left out, don't match. But every character that I imagine, they made the character in that movie look like how I imagined them to look. You know, everything in the movie was like how I imagined it in the book. But the thing is, society in Korea is on this level, and China, and maybe other places, and even in our own country. And we do have the NSA. So at the end of I started out with the Kennedy speech. Who Kennedy tried to warn you. You see what I'm saying? This book was written in the 40s. George Orwell tried to warn you. You see what I'm saying? And then so at the end of this, I'm going to mention how similar the NSA is to Big Brother. You see, and but one thing I could say, like every year in this book, they rewritten the dictionary basically. And in our lifetime, we get new words every year, maybe a new slang term or a new type of word that Webster might. The Webster say we put 5 new words in the dictionary or whatever, you know. But in the book 1984, every year the average citizen, they had less words. They were removing words from the vocabulary, because if you never heard of the word ignorant, you could be ignorant and never fix it because you never heard of the word ignorant, so you wouldn't know that you're ignorant. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't be ignorant. They can make you ignorant, and if the word doesn't exist, you would never be able to become non-ignorant. You see what I'm saying? If you never heard of the word poor or freedom or injustice, then you would never feel those emotions and never desire to have more, because the word doesn't exist. So you wouldn't know that you're being treated with injustice, because it's a word that's foreign to you. And it's like that in Korea. The word love is reserved for the leader. They don't say, this is my wife, I love my wife. This is my child, I love my child. That word is reserved for the leader. They would say, yeah, I love my leader. He's great. You see what I'm saying? And the people in power, you got to remember, in the book, the people in power had to hold 2 ideologies at the same time. So when we're indoctrinated into society, we're giving one ideology. See what I'm saying? That we all share. But the people in power maintain their power by having a double standard, basically one that they share with you, and then one that they have amongst each other. And there is no enemy. There is no enemy. They eliminated that a long time ago. But what they do is create an enemy and have you embrace the enemy and then denounce the enemy, and to prove that you have disdain for the enemy, every day you have to prove to the government that you hate the enemy, or they're going to come and recondition you. You must be mentally ill. We need to recondition you and put you back out in society after we help you change your mind, how you feel about the enemy and our government. So feel lucky. Um, you know, but there's a reason why our cell phones are flat. There's a reason why there's a camera on both sides. There's a reason why the iPhone, at first you couldn't use Siri unless it was plugged in to the wall. But then all of a sudden now you can use Siri even though it's not plugged in. Also, you see how Siri comes on by accident all the time, and they make you feel like the more freedom they take from you, the more they make you feel like you're better than somebody else, which is really crazy, because your phone has a camera on both sides. You think you're better than the other person. You're more up to date. You know, this guy has a flip phone. He's old school. Oh, my uncle still uses his flip phone. Well, he's ahead of the game. He don't have the same type. They're not getting the same type of info from him as they're getting from you. They're getting tons of information from you, but from him, they're only getting the bare minimal. You see what I'm saying? But anyway, I'm gonna hit play again and let this continue. Let it rock. So you never know what you'll do under pressure, and I want you to see how much they were into each other and how much of a risk they were taking, and this will give you a little idea. Okay. They said that they deleted copyrighted audio from my stream. So I don't know if it was the speech from Kennedy or this video clip. I knew this show was going to be an issue, but it's been an issue for the past 24 hours. Um, was you able to hear the audio from the video clip?
searching for the hidden microphone, weren't you? There aren't any. We're all right here.
We're all right here.
I found this place once when I got lost on a community hike. It's quite safe.
Is it?
Oh, you can trust me. Please trust me.
Oh, I wanted to believe you. What you wrote, I wanted to very much.
But the note wasn't enough.
What's your name?
Julia, I know yours. It's Winston. See, I'm better at finding things out than you are. Tell me, what had you been thinking about me?
I hated the sight of you. I wanted to murder you to smash your head in.
Why?
You followed me.
Well, I wanted to speak to you.
I thought you were something to do with the thought police.
I'm not the thought police. You honestly thought that.
You're young and strong and healthy.
Pure in word and deed, banners, possessions, slogans, games, all that stuff. And you thought if I'd half a chance, I'd denounce you and get you killed off.
Something of the kind. A lot of young girls would.
Actually, I am that sort to look at. Keep an eager face. Always shout with the crowd. Never shirk anything when you're safe. I do voluntary work 3 evenings a week for the Anti-Sex League. So I've earned this filthy thing.
I'm 35 years old. I've got a wife I can't get rid of. Physical grade 3.
I couldn't care less.
Or will you? I will say it. We have come here because we believe there is some sort of organization working against the party and that you are involved in it.
We want to belong to it.
We are enemies of the party. We disbelieve in the principles of INGSOC. We are thought criminals. We want to put ourselves at your mercy. If that isn't sufficient...
Martin is one of us. Pick a chair for yourself. You can stop being a servant now. We'll sit down and talk in comfort. This is called wine. You will have read about it in books, no doubt. I'm afraid very little of it reaches the outer party.
I just want to interject one more time. Just to let you know what's going on. I'm sure in the video I'm going to speak on that scene right there. But he believes that this guy shares the same ideology, and he believes he's a double agent in the government, and he's going to help him undermine the government. But that's the guy. Oh yeah, don't drink the wine. Well, that's the guy who wrote he's the guy who designed The Enemy and wrote the book on how to overthrow the government. You know, it's almost like if the guy who wrote Behold the Pale Horse, it's almost like if he was a government agent working for the government to find out who could be possible enemies of the state. You know, so if you do have Behold the Pale Horse, I'm just using that as an example. If you have Behold the Pale Horse in your house, it's a possibility that you might not be so pro-government. You see what I'm saying? You know, and they make a note of these things. That's all I'm saying. You know, that's why I like books, because now when you buy a digital book, it's on record that you bought that book. When you go visit the nation's website to read the final call, if you look on you look up what the 5% nation is, or you look up these things, it's all on record now. I mean, luckily I have a lot of books. I can pick up a book in privacy and read it. If I don't read out loud to myself, there's no microphones or nothing that's going to pick up what I'm reading. You see what I'm saying? Even the girlfriend of the guy who committed suicide in jail, that was accused of paying young girls for sex and stuff like that. Weinstein, his girlfriend bought a house under a different name, and when they raided her house, they found her cell phone wrapped in aluminum foil because she was trying to block the signal so they couldn't pick up where she was and where the phone is. And so guess what? I'm glad the news said that. Her phone was wrapped inside aluminum foil and they found the phone anyway. Because you could go to Best Buy or somewhere and wrap anything in aluminum foil and walk out the door and the buzzer won't go off. So anyway, this guy is having him drink and feel relaxed, and he wants him to tell him that how he feels about the government. He wants to make sure that he's down, and he's setting him up. And then he says that the telespeak is turned off, and he's so high in rank, he's so up there in rank, that he says he has the ability to turn it off for a certain amount of time and be off the record. And he told his butler, who's probably another agent, that he can take a break. See what I'm saying? So this is the setup right here, and you're gonna see the setup and the aftermath of the setup. And of course, the 1984 movie in 1984 has better production and cinematography and actors and all this, but this is the original. This was the first film ever made on the book, and I found probably 4 film clips from the movie that I play in this thing. So we're going to get back to it. I'm sure I'm going to explain it some more. And remember, this is pre-recorded. This is not me speaking. See, that guy ran into Winston at work, and he thought that, he already knew what Winston was up to. He already knew that Winston was writing in his diary. He already knew that Julia slipped him a note, and they were setting him up from day one. He knew, he gave the impression that he might be with the underground, but he let him dig his own grave because Winston was so, he just assumed too much. He is just like he assumed that she was with the thought police, and so he trusted the guy at the antique store. The guy at the antique store knew how to play him, and the guy said, "Look, he already knew that they were using the old version of Newspeak, the Newspeak dictionary, and that since he's on the higher up in the party, he knew that the new book was coming out in a couple of months, and he told Winston to come by the house and he could give him the advanced copy, make an announcement." He said, "Wow, you got the power to do that?" He said, "Yeah, we could do that, But even though Winston is a part of the, he works for the government, he still, can't drink things like wine and stuff like that. Only the big dogs. So this was the first time that Winston even tasted wine, and it was this funny because you got to understand, the whole time they was playing him, the whole time. So they let him dig his own grave. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because you could really relate this to now. Like Winston did all of this physically in person, face to face. And they still had surveillance equipment around them all times. They're under surveillance right now. He just cut the camera off, but he's so high up in Big Brother, whether the thing is off or not, he's like the thing. He's big part of the group think. Big Brother is an idea, like Uncle Sam is not a physical person. And this guy invented like, I don't believe that Goldstein is a real person. I think he was invented. The guy who's pouring the wine for Winston, he wrote the book that they think that can help them overthrow the government. So they created the enemy, and they're so confident and so comfortable that it's like these people believe that they can link up with Goldstein or follow his ideas and his book and have a slight chance of overthrowing the government. But they invented the enemy. They wrote the book that they was going to use, and they know all, see all. When they say Big Brother is watching you, they really watching you. So the thing is, to make the connection, when you're on Facebook and all this stuff, and you're like, maybe you got mad at something that happened in real life, that physically really happened, right? Maybe somebody cut you off on the freeway or something like that. And then you get on Facebook and say, this motherfucker cut me off. I came close to killing that motherfucker. I had my shit with me too, but I had somewhere to be, and I ain't trying to go to jail. But that motherfucker, man, he almost died today. Now, you thought that you was just expressing yourself and you really wasn't serious. You was trying to be funny and shit like that. But Big Brother wrote that shit down. Whatever you text on a social network or on your phone in a memo or a MMS message, it is time stamped and dated, and it's a document. It is an official document. So in this book, 1984, there are so many telespeak screens around that basically that's doing the documentation, and you don't need a computer, you don't need social network, because these things, there's so many of these things around that they're documenting your every move. You can't even go look out the window without them saying, what are you doing? All right, we're going to take a note of that. You went to look out the window for what? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Next time, put the copyright in the description box. Okay. I think it was the Kennedy speech that did me in. I played too much for too long. So we'll see how that turns out. Worst case scenario, you just fast forward at the beginning and skip past I don't think they'll black out the whole show. I don't think they would. So you know how people have mastered the art of self-snitching on social networks and stuff. Well, check out Winston. He's finna snitch on himself because he assumes that this guy is who's secretly down for the cause. All right, and this is O'Brien. Okay. Mr. Cheriton is the antique shop owner who's also an agent. So check this out.
He speaks for me too.
You are prepared to give your lives?
Yes.
Commit sabotage, even murder?
Yes.
Betray your country to a foreign power?
Yes.
To cheat, forge, blackmail, disseminate drugs?
Yes.
To do anything likely to cause demoralization and weaken the power of the party?
Yes.
If, for instance, it would somehow suit our purpose to throw sulfuric acid in a child's face, you are prepared to do that?
Yes.
To lose your identity and live out your life as a waiter or a dock worker? To commit suicide if and when we order?
Yes.
You are prepared, the two of you, to separate and never see one another again?
No.
No.
You did well to tell me. We must know everything. Martin, take a good look at these two comrades. You will be seeing them again, I may not. Now, go back to your pantry. I shall be switching on in a quarter of an hour.
O'Brien played him the whole time. O'Brien was playing him. When he said yes to all of that stuff, it was being recorded and documented because the big brother is watching it all times. It looked like he turned the thing off, but the thing was still recording and everything. And he told his servant to, he said, you don't have to act like you're a servant anymore. He's down with us. It was hilarious if you see the scene. And Winston was like, yes, I, whatever I gotta do, And then he thought that this thing went down successfully. He thought that he really, now the ball is rolling. Now I'm gonna be a part of something. It may not happen while I'm alive, but at least my little input will have something to do with that. Yeah, that instrumental has been flipped and remixed and tweaked out and flipped and tweaked out. Yeah, let me see. Hold on. Because I have to turn the audio on after the fact for some reason. I had the wrong settings on the audio. But here we go.
Oceania, and Russia took Europe to form Eurasia, two of the three world states were in being. Their ideologies were INSOC, Neo-Bolshevism, and later death worship in East Asia. These three states are permanently at war.
Then it's not a sham.
Wait. War has changed its character. It exists only to preserve tyranny. Fighting, when there is any, takes place on vague tropical frontiers or around the floating fortresses. The essential act of war is the destruction of human labor, a way of shattering or sinking the materials which might be used to make the masses too comfortable, in the long run, too intelligent. No invasion of enemy territory must ever take place.
Then the real war isn't with Eurasia at all. It's between all of us and...
And them. The party member, like the proletarian, tolerates conditions because he has nothing with which to compare his way of life. Efficiency, even military efficiency, is no longer needed. In Oceania, nothing is efficient except the thought police.
The swine, the filthy swine.
Yeah, after the war in '68 or something like that, they divided into Oceania, Eurasia, and one other one I forgot. But I said it earlier. It's just that after this time period, it slipped my mind. But Oceania, Eurasia, and I can't think of the other one. But like I said, it's further back. But he did model this book after a communist society, but this can be applied to Korea or China. And China, America has 30 million surveillance cameras, and China has more than that. And China is a straight example of Big Brother in this book, in the mind state and the concept, and definitely Korea and a few other countries. And the only difference with us is all it takes is one flip of a switch for us to be that way. See, the infrastructure is already put in. We're not like that, but all it takes is a flip of a switch. And I'm gonna get into that later. But I have one more final clip, and basically after that scene, Big Brother busts them. See, when they rented him the room, there was an odd painting on the wall, and he told them that it was just an old painting and don't trip off of it. But this painting moved, and it exposed the telespeak screen, and they were cold busted, and now they got to go to a rehabilitation center, and inside that place there's a room called Room 101, which you really don't want to go. Now, most of the time you will be evaporated, where not only you'll be evaporated, but any evidence that you ever existed would be erased, even in the press, even in documents. And that's the easy route. But if they think that they can make you healthy again, because basically if you want to overthrow the government, you're just mentally messed up and you're unhealthy. So they have 100% rate on making people healthy again. So that tell you how sick they are with the torture and everything. And so this is a scene from when after they've been busted and brought into the place, and he didn't even realize where he was at because they've been beating him up for 7 weeks. So after 7 weeks, he's like, where am I? Am I in room 101? And after beating him up kicking his ass for 7 weeks, like Guantanamo Bay or something, he's like, am I in room 101? And they go, nope, not yet. You're not there yet. So just imagine. And he saw other people beg and plead not to be taken to room 101. Okay.
Means but an end. Power over the human mind, and power over all matter, climate, disease, the laws of gravity. Because we control the mind. Reality is inside the skulls. We control the laws of nature. The stars are not light years, but a few kilometers away. If we wished, we could blot them out. Here, that is power. In our world, there will be no love but the love of Big Brother, no laughter but the laugh of triumph over a defeated enemy, no art, no science, no literature, no enjoyment, but always and only, Winston, there will be the thrill of power. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stomping on the human face forever. Now, this version of the book, this film, which was inspired by the book, was made in 1956 by BBC. Now, you can Google this and you can search for this in YouTube and you will find it and you can watch it for free. There is a second Hollywood production that was made. It's in black and white, but it's kind of like have a bluish tone. It's been remastered. That one's for free too. But the official Hollywood production came out in 1984 because the book was called 1984. So the one that's really like well made was done in 1984, but I think YouTube wants $2 or something to watch it, $2.99 or something like that. But there are 2 other free versions of this movie, of this book as a movie, and there's an auditory book on YouTube, but it's 10 hours long. And so yeah. He telling you, he kept torturing him. He's like, look, 2 and 2 is 5. And the guy's like, no, 2 and 2 is 4. And he said, torturing him. Now, can you see that 2 and 2 is 5? He says, yes, I see it. And then it fades back to 4. Do you see 2? See what I'm saying? He said, we the one that told you 2 and 2 is 4. We taught you, wouldn't have known that. He said, no, look, 2 and 2. Yeah, we taught you how to achieve 4 by 2 and 2, but 2 and 2 is 5. You see, because now that's what we say. Everything we invented, 2 and 2 is 4, and we can change it to 5. It's 5. It's been 5 for a long time. You see. Also, the Earth is the center of the universe. No, the Earth is the 3rd planet from the sun, and all the planets revolve around the sun. No, all the planets, including the sun, revolve around the Earth. And he said, no, we learned that in school. Exactly. We taught you that, but the truth is, the earth is, you know what I'm saying? You're in room 101 now, and we're gonna tell you the truth, and you may not be able to handle it. You know, in that torture room, they have took out people's teeth, cut people's fingers, and all kind of stuff to get people back in line, whether what they're telling them is the truth or not. They call it the ministry of truth, but it's really not. And he brainwashed him and Julia to the point when they got out, they was not interested in seeing each other after all that love and all that they felt for each other. They were so broken, and he told them, look, you wouldn't heal from this 1,000 years from now, 100 years from now. You would never be the same. You know what I'm saying? I want to play that clip back again because the first part of it got cut off. I want to make sure you catch every word of this. All right.
The party seeks power for its own sake, not as a means but an end. Power over the human mind, and power over all matter, climate, disease, the laws of gravity. Because we control the mind. Reality is inside the skulls. We control the laws of nature. The stars are not light years, but a few kilometers away. If we wished, we could blot them out. Here, that is power. In our world, there will be no love but the love of Big Brother, no laughter but the laugh of triumph over a defeated enemy, no art, no science, no literature, no enjoyment, but always and only, Winston, there will be the thrill of power. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
That's definitely a cult leader mentality. Hint, hint. That's definitely what goes on in a cult-like community or society. Those same types of philosophies. You know what I'm saying? So I hear you, 3Ts and an observer. Now, this story is about censorship and surveillance. And right now in America, at this time that we live in now, it's about censorship and surveillance. You see how Farrakhan and stuff and other things that's going on. People been booted from social networks and stuff like that. And, you know, in 1984, there were always two nations constantly at war. And sometimes Oceania would bomb itself, you know, just to keep their own people on edge and keeping them mad at the enemy. And every day they would have to show their hatred for the enemy for 2 minutes. They call it the 2-minute hate period. And if you didn't have an expression on your face of anger or something like that, or chant hate, hate, hate at the screen, they thought that the thought police, that's what they call it. Because see, they stop crime before it happens. They come after you when you think about a crime. See what I'm saying? So they don't have crime. They have a thought police that nip crime in the bud before it happens. So when you look like you ain't tripping off the enemy, they come and get you and take you to the facility to cure you of your sickness. And Goldstein Book was a symbolic enemy of the state. Goldstein Book gave people that was against the government hope, but they invented that book. They took care. They already knew that there would be people like that, so they already had an antidote for that, and they was able to get those people too. You see what I'm saying? And Goldstein Book starts out, you know, it was a cold day in April when the clock strikes 13. All right, so that just lets you know that it's on some other shit right there. So the thought police stops crime before it happens. And the crazy thing about Newspeak, which is like Webster's Dictionary or whatever, it narrows the range of thought. You know what I'm saying? And it also has these weird words that cancel each other out, like double think, thought crime, belly feel, duck speak. And you know, where they rehabilitate you at, it's called the Ministry of Love. But when you go inside the facility, you get no love. You get your ass beat. So Winston had been beaten for 7 weeks before he realized how long he was at the Ministry of Love. And so, you know, it's crazy. Today you have people, instead of Winston, today you have people like Edward Snowden. You know, you have the NSA data center, and you have the MDR massive data repository. All right. So the massive data repository, guess what it does? It stores all the data that you're posting on your networks and on your phones and all that stuff. You see what I'm saying? Massive data repository. You can't name it no better than that. All right. And then you got the NSA. You know, and social media data, social media exchange data with the government. They all got back doors where NSA can go in the back door, and they keep metadata for about a year. In Europe, they have this CCHQ. You know, you cannot avoid a camera in downtown London or whatever. You know, you can't. If smoking a joint was illegal and you smoke a joint downtown London, you know, they don't even need a police there. They'll just come and get you where you stand. You know what I'm saying? And then outside of government are many groups analyzing our information anyway, corporations. And before 9/11, the NSA only contracted work out to less than 3,000 companies. But after 9/11, the NSA contracted work out to over 7,000 companies, and they allowed them to use NSA databases, which they gather data on citizens, that the data that they get from their computer use and their phone use and all that stuff. You know, even when you have to type in a number to get a discount at a grocery store or something like that, every time you make a purchase and you put in your little discount code, which is like your phone number or something, all that gets recorded. You see what I'm saying? Nothing is safe. We have become a American industrial state, and the NSA is allowed to spy on the whole world. The NSA slow dances with social networks, and information is the oxygen of a democracy. That's what I heard one politician say. Yes. And that sounds quite odd to me, but that's what it is said. And you know, the NSA stands on, their property is like more than 325 acres large. They have a small army, a fire department, and a SWAT team, but they still couldn't stop Edward Snowden, okay, from leaking the information. And some people consider him a hero. Some of our policies have been changed because of his leaks and information. And you cannot say that he's not a patriot. But there's a possibility of 4,000 more people like Edward Snowden in the NSA. And those people are referred to as insider threats. So yeah, you know, 1984, Big Brother, these two-way television sets, these, you know, we got the smart TVs now. Samson already admitted to saying that they listen to conversations near the television. They can hear you. The Alexa have already put in the bid with the government to grant permission to listen at all times instead of waiting to be called upon. You don't have to call Alexa's name for it to listen, and they looking for approval for that. And if this 5G technology come around, I think that they will be able to look through walls with the device using Wi-Fi, but they only can see silhouettes, I think. But they might be able to see silhouettes through walls. But we was told that Wi-Fi cannot travel through walls and trees. So, we're trying to figure that one out too. There's some mixed information out there. So the point of all this is that sometimes the propaganda that's put out there that sounds really good, that make you say, it sounds like they would do something like that, or it's the Illuminati, it's this and that. It could be the same people that's governing you. They're putting that BS out there to distract you. It's a psyops, psyops, and these are crisis workers. You have to really fall back and just observe everything and make chess moves, and you can't jump on every conspiracy that pop up because the policymakers could be the same people that create the conspiracies. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, I was going to go live at midnight last night. I wasn't feeling well. I had a slight headache, and that could have been Big Brother also. I tried to upload some videos saying, hey, I'm having trouble, but I'm going to go live about this. And it's been a really big challenge to do this show, and I'm not even nobody. I don't have a bunch of viewers and stuff like that. But I hope they didn't eliminate Kennedy's speech at the beginning, because out of everything I said today, Kennedy's speech at the beginning of this show about secret societies and stuff, I think was the most relevant. And I'm feeling my headache coming back, and like I said, that could be something to do with the powers that be. But I appreciate y'all coming through, and this is just something to think about. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Yes, that whole series was pre-recorded, and it was my old show I did about 1984 in the NSA. And I'm gonna do some more of this because I've done some stuff in the past that might not have got enough views because of the subject matter. So I wanted to replay this. The next time I'll replay my story on black astronauts and how I felt that one of the first would-be black astronauts was murdered. He was test flying a high-speed aircraft, and there were other blacks that test these high-speed aircrafts, and they never had an issue. But it was top secret, so if anything happened, if there was a crash or anything, it was going to be in a secret file and nobody would know. So if you have two pilots in the plane, they have to abort in the plane for some reason because they sabotaged the plane, and then you have a force go out there and shoot the black pilot in the head. Nobody would know because they'll just say that the one pilot survived and the other pilot it didn't survive. You know what I'm saying? Greetings, Sage Wizzle in the building. Oh yes, definitely. 1984, man. You got to put two and two together. That's all I'm saying. Put two and two together. It's because it's deep. I mean, like the double speak thing. Let me make sure my audio is okay. Okay, the double speak thing. Even when it comes to something simple like a cell phone. Let me see. Capricorn 1. I'm late, but we'll watch the replay. Yeah, I appreciate it if you do. This is a 1-year-old video I made, And this was debuted on the Why You Trippin' channel, and this was a 1 year old video, and I brought it back, and it seems like it's even more relevant. And like like I said before, you can have a cell phone. It could be made any shape they wanted to make it, but they decided to make it have 6 sides. They wanted to make it square, a box. They didn't want to make it oval or round or concave. Okay, um, cell phones didn't have any cameras, and then it had a camera, but then they convinced you, well, your phone is not advanced, and you ain't popping unless you got a front camera and a back camera. So when you saw other people with more expensive phones that had a front and back camera, you go, oh, yeah, I gotta, I'm finna upgrade though. So you felt inadequate. You felt less than, because the new phones, just like with the phones now, oh, they give you they got the front and back camera, so now they give you 2 cameras in the back. And so when people see your phone, you only got 1 camera in the back, they go, oh yeah, that's last year's phone. So now they put out a phone with 3 cameras in the back, and you're supposed to feel inadequate because of that. But none of this stuff is for your benefit. And there was a time when you could take the battery out the phone. I used to do it all the time. If I was going over somebody's house that maybe they was in the game or something like that, and I wanted to respect their privacy, as soon as I got off the freeway, I would take my battery out the phone and continue the rest of the way to their house. You see what I'm saying? And I used to be on that page a long time ago. I used to think like that a long time ago. My first real handheld computer device that I could carry on my hip was an Apple Newton. So look that up. That was in 1996. It cost $700. All right. And what else? And also, so what I want to say is, like, I was just tripping off Siri and how it used to operate, because there was a time where they didn't want Siri to run your battery down, so you couldn't really use Siri unless if the phone is on standby, the phone would have to be plugged up to use Siri. Now, if you're using the phone and you have the lock screen off, you could call Siri. But all of a sudden now, it doesn't matter if the phone is on standby, even if it's not plugged up, you can ask for Siri, and Siri does come on by accident a lot, so it lets you know that Siri's listening. And like I said, Alexa, this is a year ago, Alexa asked Congress to allow them to listen for their name. To listen regardless if their name is called, to be able to turn on automatically. And nobody's talking about this or anything like that. Yeah. There used to be a Newton store before the Apple Store. They were smaller, like they looked like little bookstores, and the apps for the Newton was no less than $49 per app. And they had basic for Newton. I designed the logo way back then with the Apple Newton, and there was a steak and cheese shop near my house when I used to have a little penthouse, and I used to fax my order from my handheld computer. And then I used to go to nightclubs every single day. So inside a dark nightclub, the handheld Apple Newton had a backlit screen. It had a stylus, and it had its own writing alphabet called graffiti, which allowed you to write every letter of the alphabet with a single stroke. So I was like, shoot, I could write faster and more efficient on this Apple Newton than I could on paper. And then I used to keep a file on people, especially women. I used to keep a file on them. If they educated, they got kids, or they live in a nice neighborhood, whatever. I used to keep little attributes, with their file. But that's a whole nother story. But those apps. So be happy that an app only costs 99 cents and all that stuff. And then finally, Sprint turned the Apple Newton into a cell phone, and it became one of the first smartphones. So I had one of those also. I've even had chip phones in the past, like the military looking Motorola flip phones. I've had those phones in the past, especially when you didn't want to be on record for things or whatever. But anyway, um, yeah. So back, I keep trying to get to this point where words and wordplay when it comes to cell phones, because you can't take the battery out no more. You do not know what off is. And in the book 1984, they had a thing called double speak. All right, that's an old concept. And remember, the book was written in 1948. So they may be a language at the NSA and with the government and stuff like that, because the CIA uses the old Motorola binary phones, because they know when you pull the battery out, the phone is dead. The space shuttle used old technology to run the space shuttle, because anything smart or advanced could easily be hacked, and they didn't want that to happen. So they want you to believe that our technology is advancing and advanced technology is better. But guess what? All those ATMs and gas tanks at the gas station and a bunch of other stuff is still running off of Windows XP. And it would be too expensive to switch all the infrastructure out. So Bill Gates is a genius. All right. And but anyway, let me see what y'all saying. We had to read utopian novels one year, and never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that now I'm grown and now these novels would be so relevant. Yes, like Animal Farm. Like Animal Farm. And you heard what the guy said. He spoke really quick, but you might have just got, you was here already, but you heard what the guy said. We control the weather. We can make it where you can't see the stars for days. The stars are closer than you think. They're really not that far out. You see what I'm saying? We have never seen a real picture of any planet. Now I know that there are some simple Simons out there that would go, no, you can see a planet, and they get on Google. See, here's a picture of a planet. Or that if I say that we've never seen a real picture of the Earth where you can see the whole Earth, now they might be lower space orbit photos and videos, but there is no videos and pictures of the Earth from a higher orbit. It's all artist renditions. Even the planet that used to be on the iPhone, the wallpaper, that was a fake picture of the Earth, and it used to evolve. You can look it up. You can look up the history of the artist renditions of what Earth was supposed to be that they used for fact. You know what I'm saying? And I know some people say, well, we could go on YouTube right now and see the Earth rotating in real time. Yeah, but you're only going to see 2/3 of it. And how do you know if that's real or not? How do you know if that's not CGI? Because in 1968, they made a movie called Space Odyssey 2001. And guess what? We still haven't reached that level. And if they wouldn't have told us that was a movie, we probably would have believed that it was real. You see what I'm saying? News media use doublespeak. Wow, the Truman Show. Yeah, news use doublespeak and trigger words and stuff to get you to go out there and risk Corona and get out there and march and destroy your community. And you have double agents that, you know, if I was the government and I wanted to keep an eye on the naysayers and the would-be, the people that would be more highly to create civil unrest. Well, the government already knows. That's why they was able to get Gaddafi in Egypt. When there's a large amount of young, unemployed people, it's easy to motivate them to do something. So they use Twitter to instigate the overthrow of Gaddafi, and he got murdered by his own people in his own country. And they didn't have to get their hands dirty. You know what I'm saying? I'm not blaming that on the United States or anything like that. I'm just saying that social media was used to influence a bunch of young people who felt like they had nothing to lose because they don't have nothing. And but what America does sometimes, I feel, and it's only a theory, um, the biggest threat to the people in power is young people because they're young, they're healthy, and they have endurance. So what you do is you're always at war with somebody and you send them off to possibly lose their life. And so you could look at Vietnam as an example. 3 million people, a lot of young people lost their lives, and it lowered the population of the youth. And anybody that was still left, they made sure that they got educated and got jobs to keep civil obedience in our country. Because the Vietnam War wasn't won or lost. They fought to the bitter end. I can't say that was a win, you know, but they after they beat you to the Pope, whether you give up or not or concede, then they do business with you, and they economically whip your ass. You see what I'm saying? So off and on doesn't mean anything anymore. Just like free on the internet has no meaning. Friend has no meaning. Friend has been eliminated. You see what I'm saying? Even words like family and stuff like that, because see, there's a certain language that the black identity extremists likes to use, and some of the pro-blacks like to use. They'll say, hey family, you know what I'm saying, welcome to the show, or welcome to our place. All right, you know, hey family, you know, loved one. These are diffusing words to diffuse your to make you feel more at ease and feel like you don't have to be on guard. These words, that's why America is so powerful, not because of the nuclear weapons and the lasers and the satellites that can shoot down possible nuclear weapons, and the internet and the infrastructure and the tanks and the ships. It's language. America is kicking people's ass with language because we have thousands of words that have no meaning at all. For real, the language is what makes or break people. That's why, like I said, in Korea, you would think someone would feel like they have nothing and they want to escape. Well, a lot of Koreans try to escape to China, not for their freedom, because that's a foreign concept. They're just hungry, and they heard that in China they feed their pets rice and regular food, and they like, well shoot, if their pets is eating like humans, they must have a lot of food there. I want to go there and eat. And it's not strange to hear a Korean under, you know, the dictatorship say, if I'm going to die, I would rather, the best way I could die is with a full, like to compliment someone is the best way they could die is choking on bread because they ate too much food, or choking on food, like a mouth suffocating from stuff in their mouth full of bread is a nice way. That person went out big. And that's strange, you know. That's something that we cannot even fathom. In Japan, in the financial district, in the shopping district, they have warehouses where people live in cages. They're called cage people. And you can lock your cage and make sure your stuff is safe when you leave and go out and work and make some money. And then you can come back, unlock your cage, get inside, and you use your cell phone. That's your TV, that's your computer, that's your way to take classes and communicate and get an education, all in your cage with your phone. And people have gotten quite used to that, even though we could not fathom that lifestyle. But Korea is very much like the people in 1984, because if your parents wasn't rebellious and your grandparents wasn't rebellious, Well, you could probably work outside of Korea. You could go visit China, have a business, or do something outside the country. But if anybody in your history was rebellious, then your status level is low. You'll never be able to have anything. You'll always be under suspicion, and you might be rented out to Finland or somewhere, or Iceland, to work at a boat dock, getting nothing, pennies on the dollar, away from your family and your kids, and not knowing when you're going to come back. Modern day slavery, you know. So, on and off means something to us as regular citizens. Yeah, that tell you how good my microphone is. If you can't hear a plastic bottle hit the floor or something like that, you need to get another mic, unless the compressor is working. But today, when somebody, let's say an agent hands somebody else a phone, this is just a theory and a concept that may be true. The agent will look at them and say, okay, I'm going to secure this phone, but is this phone off, 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 or off, off, off? And then the other agent says, the phone is off 3, or off, off, off. Then that means that it's completely dead. It probably don't have a battery inside. Because even when you take the battery out your phone, they may have put another type of battery that you don't even recognize as a battery. Because think, we've been conditioned to think batteries look a certain way. So they can put a battery there that doesn't look like a battery, so therefore we know not to take it out. Now, there was a time when your TV, if it went out or started tripping, you could open it up, take the tube out, go to the nearest electronics store, buy the replacement tube, go back to the house, stick it in, and your TV would work. Your TV was an analog, it would work as long as you took care of it. It would work for life. Just like your stereo, something burned out in the stereo, you take it out, take the piece out. Now you got to know about motherboards and all this stuff. Number 2, I don't know if you know this, but you cannot open anything that you buy anymore. You cannot open a stereo, you can't open a TV, you can't open anything. You have to ship it back to Japan or China for repair. There's a main hub in your city nearby, probably 6 cities away, and you got to send it to the main hub, and then from the main hub it gets shipped out to the country where it was recorded. But yeah, off and on doesn't mean the same thing anymore. And this can happen to you on Instagram. On your phone, you think your camera's off and you see your logo, but your camera could still be on and you don't know it. You see what I'm saying? And I did have an idea about putting tape over the cameras on both sides, and but somebody must have heard my thoughts and they came out with that invention, so that you can buy a removable tape that's restickable that you can cover your cameras with. And don't take my word for it. If you get a chance, listen to as much Edward Snowden as possible. Any interviews he's done, listen to him. It's educational, very informative. You have no privacy, and there's no way for you to stop them from collecting data. All you can do is check to see if they're collecting. And trust me, you don't need a lot of, let's say there's an app you're not using. You don't need, for text information that's in a shorthand, it doesn't require a lot of kilobytes to send information to the main hub. Videos and audios and pictures take up a lot of memory. But if let's say you got the Candy Crush app and you went to 3 different stores, 2 different cities, and stuff like that, right? Well, a shorthand text message would probably only take 20 kilobytes to say all of that, what you did, how long you was there, where you start and where you ended up coming back to, what freeway you took. All of that was shorthand text. You see what I'm saying? And you can look at an app activity on your phone And if it's an app that you haven't used, but it keeps showing that it's using 30 kilobytes, or maybe it's only using 10 bytes, and you go, well, it's low because I don't use it, so it ain't doing anything. But why is it sending any amount? Why does it say any amount of usage is being used if you haven't used it? It should say 0. Now, if you look at your Facebook app, first of all, the app itself is using 300 megabytes. I took it off my phone a long time ago. I used a web browser. I have a link. I have a symbol that looks just like the app on my screen, and when I click it, it goes to the web browser and take me to Facebook instead of downloading the app. I'm like, this app is using tons of memory and it's collecting tons of data. Let me see. I never know TV had tubes. Always wonder why they call it that. Yep, I'm old as dust. I'm telling my age. Yeah, that's right. Edward Snowden. You know, yeah, Edward Snowden today keeps the privacy in check, because he would tell you, that there's no on and off switch to cut their information gathering off. The only difference is that on the Android, they tell you what they're doing, and then they have this other button that says if you want to know additional things that they're doing, click here. So I have to give them props for that. And also, Samsung said that we do listen to conversation near the television set. But yeah, televisions had tubes, and it received a analog signal from a tower, and the tower would broadcast ultra high frequency, which is UHF, very high frequency, which is VHF, and low frequency, which is LHF. So these TVs, if you ever go to a museum or something, I don't know, you'll see that you have switches for all these different frequencies, right? Analog frequencies. But now all of those frequencies are available to the government for their own use or to sell. Since they switched to a digital signal, all those frequencies are available. Now, the government already owned 2/3 of frequencies. They only left 1/3 of the frequencies available for capitalism, for commerce, and for corporations to make money. But now they own all the analog frequencies to do with what they will, or to come up with new things to sell. You think after these tablets and all this stuff, it's going to play out? No, they're going to reinvent the old analog signals to create new products to sell to you, to also for you to lose more privacy. You see what I'm saying? And if there's a tall mountain or something, let's say there's a mountain 25 miles away, and you have to go through a tunnel to get to the other side. Well, that TV tower in your city is not going to go past that mountain. You know what I'm saying? And it's only going to go about 50 miles tops with a signal. Now, with 50 miles, it can reach probably 650,000 households. But so I always wonder, how did they get a signal to the moon? Because it was the same type of antenna. How you going to get a signal to the moon? And there was, for a long time, you couldn't even communicate with the space station 24 hours. Only recently, in our time, you could communicate with the space station 24 hours, and they had to put satellites in the radiation belt higher than the space station, so you could communicate with the space station 24 hours. And and when the Apollo capsule was heading towards the moon, the astronauts had to be told when to speak, because there's supposed to be, I don't know, a 3-second delay, a 5-second delay. But you can hear in the background at one scene, one video clip I saw, you can hear in the background that there's another radio and another person saying, speak, talk, speak. Now, they told us that there was only one way of radio communication on the space capsule, but obviously they had two lines. They had two different signals going into that space capsule. You see what I'm saying? And so it just makes me wonder. So we can go off onto that, but I did make a video about the space missions and stuff like the space program. We can always talk about that at another time, but there is no roll of film that would have made it through the upper and lower Van Allen belt. And if you do have satellites in between two major radiation belts, when it beams signals to the Earth, what else is coming with that signal is disease and carcinogenic. I don't even know what to call it, but most technology and that word is almost misleading because most of our technology was organic. Really, the computer type technology is really primitive. Yeah, they can make a chip smaller and smaller, so they can make devices smaller and smaller, and they can make robots and cars drive themselves as human beings, and they can make computers that think faster than a human. But if you turn and look at if you turn your head to the left and look at a rhinoceros, an elephant, a tree, you know what I'm saying? You look at a shark, you look at these God-made technology, it still doesn't, you know what I'm saying? They have a robotic bull for the military. They have a robotic Doberman type of device for the military to use for war and carry water and stuff like that. We have planes that can break the sound barrier. But you know what? We've never been out of lower space orbit. And the cool part is many black pilots have flown test missions to test high-speed, high-performance planes. They've earned thousands and thousands of miles, which make them qualify for the space program, but because they're black, they wouldn't let them in the space program. There's a debate out of 3 black pilots of who was the first black man in space. So when they finally came down to the space shuttle, guess what? The space shuttle never flew higher than those black pilots did when they were doing their spy photography for the government. So it took them 50 years to put the black pilot's name on the chrome wall at NASA, to put them on the astronauts list. It took all of that. They tried to act like because they was on the space shuttle in pretty white suits that they were doing more than the pilots that were taking spy photography and testing high-speed performance planes. And then when they made sure this plane was safe, they brought in a guy to, break the sound barrier and all that stuff for the public, so the other guy could get the credit. But the first guy, he was eligible to be an astronaut. All of a sudden, his plane crashed, and the other pilot lives, but he died. How did that happen? They both eject at the same time. So the next pilot was going to be an astronaut because they wanted to outdo Russia, and they wanted to show that America is more advanced, because Russia was 20 years advanced, more advanced than us. And they said, well, maybe we could do it on a social level. We could put in a black pilot, and then we would look more, that we treat people better here. We can really look like who we say we are. But we still had Jim Crow at the time, and the only person that was pushing the issue was Kennedy. And the guy who would have been the first astronaut, he designed the way the space shuttle landed, but it took another 20 years or so before they started using the space shuttle. But when Kennedy was murdered, that guy was smart enough to retire before there was some kind of accident, quote unquote, with him. And he went to college when he was 15. He graduated from high school early and went to college when he was 15 and all that stuff. Let me see what you're saying. Yeah, that's a shame. So the next time I do something like this, it'll be another replay of the information I got about black pilots, all the way up to the black pilots that were on the space shuttle. But we're going to start at the very beginning, where there's black and white images of the pilots. We going way back, and um, so I'm just saying that when these videos are made, whether you use closed captioning or not, the computer is turning your words into text and storing that information. So if you do say anything controversial or radical or whatever, even if you delete the video, they already have the whole script as text on the file. You know what I'm saying? And of course, they could check their server for the video and stuff like that. But I think that everything is, like let's say YouTube keeps your video on the server, right? Well, even if YouTube deletes your video, the NSA has a copy of your video. The NSA has a copy of the video. The NSA knows what your GPS is doing in your car. And I listen to a lot of police scanners. I listen to one particular police scanner app, and I heard the police say this guy had just did some kind of crime, and the police said that they're activating the tracking system. You see what I'm saying? Because the government here, I guess it's the NSA, they let the police here use their they have, like, I don't know if it's a drone that's up there 24 hours, or they have a tower, and the tower can pick up text messages, and it can track cars, especially if the cars have the GPS already built into the cars. Because when you go buy a car, people go, wow, you mean this GPS is free? Because back in the day you had OnStar and all that, and but they already included the GPS and stuff into the price of the car. You paid for it, even though you think it's free. Just like the satellite radio, they might have gave you a 1-year trial or some shit, but that cost was already added to the price of the car. You just didn't know it, and the salesperson got a kickback for that. But anyway, it's nothing for free, and everything is bullshit, and everything is an illusion, and trust nothing. But anyway, the police officer made a mistake, because sometimes they forget that by law people can monitor the scanners, and if they have something that's really serious, like they don't want the crook to know what they're doing, or they don't want to give away something that they're planning, they will switch over to another line, but they have to ask their captain for permission, or the 911 operator would tell them to switch over to another line because somebody told them from higher up. But sometimes they slip, and so this cop was after this person, and he said, we're switching on the tracking system now. So they're tracking the car. Now they just had a sideshow, and they were there, and there were some people who shot guns through the they stuck the gun out the window of the car and shot in the air. So they kept track of those people. They started checking Instagram and stuff to see if anybody was live. And then once they all dispersed and left the area, because they didn't want nobody to have any accidents or run through red lights and kill anybody or hit anybody across the streets, which usually happens, they went to the house of the cars that they picked out and tried to arrest the people once they got home. And see, this is what I'm talking about. They knew people were on their way to the White House. Their car said it, their phone said it. They have cell towers that say they're in this area. They have Wi-Fi's in people's homes and restaurants and stores that say, yeah, they're in this area and they're right here. You see what I'm saying? So they knew there was a movement, a body of people going to a certain point. They knew from what they said on social media, they knew in advance that they were going because they talked about it, because that's how they can. Ain't nobody writing handwritten letters to each other. That's why I know the whole thing on Washington was contrived. It was planned. It was approved. You see what I'm saying? And just like in 1984, the whoever arranged it wanted to make the president look bad, because if they would have passed the stimulus and everything for 2000 and do all this stuff, he would have went out with a bang. They said, no, he's not going to go out with a bang. We're going to make him look bad, and we're going to pull this move and then impeach him, and then he's going to go down in history as the worst president and the only president that's been impeached twice. But he still is not worse than Nixon. You know, Nixon was one of the badass ones. And when I look at Nixon and look at our president, I go, he's nothing like Nixon. Nixon is the mother. Look up Nixon. Okay, look him up. You know, and then other presidents had dropped a chemical on the enemy, like napalm. Look up napalm. They drop it on the enemy out the sky, and when the chemical touches your skin, it turns into flames. When it touches flesh, it turns into fire. They were burning men, women, and children like that. All right. The Twin Towers event did not happen during our current president time. It happened when Bush was president. You know, I'm just saying, you know, there was trillions of dollars missing from the banks. There were gold bars. You think those Twin Towers is just regular office buildings? They were holding the money for some countries, because most countries keep their money in Switzerland because it's very hard to invade Switzerland. But the Twin Towers, they had sold the people on the fact that the Twin Towers was so rock solid that they was trusted to keep people's money and gold, the backbone of people's currencies. The guy who owned the building's insurance policy was increased before the incident, and somebody was on he was about to go on trial for embezzling trillions of dollars from the government. All the evidence was in that building because they sold everybody on that building being rock solid. Now, if a B-52 bomber can hit the Empire State Building and that building doesn't fall or burn up, how can these little rinky-dink, paper-thin, fiberglass airlines bring down the Twin Towers? You see what I'm saying? Oh, white phosphorus. Now I just learned something right now. If white phosphorus is worse than napalm, I hate to see that. And if you haven't seen an old movie called Jacob's Ladder, look up the movie Jacob's Ladder, where our own military was smoking contaminated or tainted weed just to see what the effects of that chemical would have on people, and they used their own people as guinea pigs in the war. Jacob's Ladder is deep. So I'm just saying that every time something happened to us, we lose our freedom. When the Twin Towers fell, all of a sudden we have less freedom. We're under more surveillance as citizens. You tell us that if an outsider did this to us, you know, why they are not under more surveillance and more scrutiny. You know what I'm saying? They had a war game going on at the same time as this invasion, and they still didn't know what was going on. We have radar. Radar is old as hell. Now they can fly below radar, yeah, but you can't tell me. I let them slide on the Twin Towers, but you cannot tell me they didn't know 2 weeks in advance that they were coming to the White House. And anybody can yell the president's name and slap somebody in the face. And that doesn't mean that that they know the president or working for the president. You see what I'm saying? But if you want to sabotage someone, I just know these things because we've been sabotaged as a people. They've spent billions of dollars making us look bad, financing films. Some dude want to make a film like Hoop Dreams or whatever, Menace to Society, and they can't get the money, and then all of a sudden they got the money in the form of a grant from some bullshit organization. And then you sit back and go, did we really need colors? Did we really need Boys in the Hood? Did we really need certain movies? Because when Spike Lee wanted to make a movie about the nation, he couldn't get it. He had to beg Black Hollywood for the money. And most people just go overseas to get the money. Trust me, we would have never got Boys in the Hood if it didn't get a 5-minute standing ovation in Cannes, France, at the Cannes Film Festival. No standing ovation, no uproar, no movie. But who's to say agents didn't pay a bunch of people to go to the film festival to instigate a 5-minute standing ovation so the movie would get distribution in America? You see what I'm saying? Let's see here. What we did in Syria these past 4 years might go down and as a crime against humanity. I agree, and they would justify it like like the Twin Towers. They go out, kill 200,000 people because of the Twin Towers, and everybody go, well, that's the least they should have got that because look what happened to our family, our citizens. But you don't have all the evidence on all the proof. Now Marquise is in the building, and Marquise says the fumes are toxic and can kill you, and those same folks are sponsoring YouTube content, and it was obvious last election cycle. Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I was trying to get people to read between the lines of the movie. The book 1984. You see, because there might be a show that's conscious. All right, I'm just going to use that word. A woke type of YouTube channel, and they're called Underground Uhuru, and they sell the t-shirts, they got the hats, they got the controversial t-shirts, they got commercials like Soul Train in between their segments, and they're telling you that you should go out there and slap George Zimmerman. People be playing the knockout game and stuff with each other. How come nobody's playing the slap game with George, the slap challenge? Well, you just incited an assault and battery on another human being. You just incited a riot, and now that's on record, right? And you could be working for the government trying to get us to do these things. But because you're so conscious and woke, and you got the I Raw on the t-shirt, and you got all these statements, I'm black and proud and all this, well, guess what? When you walk around with that stuff, you are identified. And now you have on a uniform. Do you know how Hitler knew who was in his camps? Hitler could walk into a camp and know exactly who and what everybody was in the camp. You know why? Because they had labels and logos. People don't even know where clothing labels come from. You know what I'm saying? The gays in the prison camp had a salmon-colored triangle. You know how you look at patches and stuff like it's on Star Trek, and patches on uniforms and stuff like that? They had a salmon-colored triangle. You knew if they had a salmon-colored triangle that they were gay. And they had symbols and logos for every type of thing, so they knew when they look at you, they knew what they were dealing with. So yeah, you walk around with the ing that people pronounce as unk. I don't know why people think Egyptians had the same pronunciations as the American language that was almost German and the American English language. I don't know, and we have many other, French words and stuff that we use, but for some reason we're gonna pronounce this Egyptian word in Africa the same way we would pronounce it in America. And if you look at a French word, nothing in French is pronounced the way it's spelled. Okay, Africa ain't too far from France. Most foreign languages, the root is in Latin, right? If you can speak Latin, you can speak Portuguese, Italian, Spanish. You can speak a lot of language. Now French is different. I don't know where the hell French came from. Maybe it has a African origin. Well, they all do it, but for the sake of argument. So the unk is really pronounced ing, ing, and we can debate that. Just hit me on Lordship 2020. You want me on your show, on your panel? We can debate that, and I got my information from Anthony Browder. Just look him up, Anthony Browder. One of his books is called The Browder Files. A person who actually take people on tours to Egypt. Who also, they put his essays in the Washington Post daily. Not anymore, but there was a series that he did for it was either the New York Times or the Washington Post. So let me see. Yeah, I mean, and you know what? Maybe I can convince you that the unk is really pronounced ing, and I got a strong argument to convince you of its pronunciation. If you say the unk is the key of life and the symbol of life and energy and the womb and all of that stuff, and the keyhole, well, I wanna meet you at a center point. Anything that requires energy requires ing. ing. That's why I'm telling you that the unk is pronounced ing. That's why in hieroglyphics you see different people holding the ing in their hand, because they want you to know what they were doing. You cannot show people, like when you see a picture, they're just standing still. But if they have the ing in their hand, then you know that there's an action being done. You see what I'm saying? So you cannot walk without ing. If you want to move from one place to the other, it requires walking. And you're hearing this from a man who has the Eye of Ra tattooed on his sternum. Okay, right below the trachea, I have the Eye of Ra. Okay, for the feds, so now you can identify me. So you cannot have a conversation without talking. You cannot move through water without swimming. Okay? So anyway, moving on. I could keep going, but you get the idea on that. All right. Anthony Browder. Yes, look up a book called The African Origins of Electromagnetism, and you will see that the because we pronounce it, I do it too. That's why I couldn't learn French that well, because I've been to France. I couldn't learn it because I kept trying to use my American way of pronouncing words for the language, and I said, but it's, I had to learn the basics, like what's the French word for exit and stuff like that. I had to learn the simple stuff like emergency exit and do not enter and wrong way, little stuff, right? Stuff like that. But Anthony Browder took his daughter. She's probably graduated from college by now, but when she was 9, he took her to Africa, to Egypt, which is in Africa, and she wrote her first book called My First Trip to Egypt. And he always took tours to Egypt, and he wrote 22 essays on the African origins of electromagnetism, which was printed in the Washington Post or the New York Times first. I think it was the Washington Post maybe, and then it was turned into a book later on, and you know how, let's say, like I said before, technology shrinks, right? It starts out big, and over time it shrinks because it makes you think that something big is prehistoric and something small is modern. Okay, well, I'm going to agree with that argument. Now, a light bulb, a conventional light bulb, has never been a light bulb. They just called it a light bulb so they could sell it. That's it. GE, they called it a light bulb so they could make money off of it, and it did make things brighter so you can see. So it did produce a light, and it was a bulb. So it wasn't like they lied to you. But only today in modern times, we only just got modern lights. A LED light is a real light. Not even a halogen light. A LED light. Finally, we got a light bulb. You know what I'm saying? Because the conventional light bulb is a heater. It produced more heat than light. It would heat a small room better than lighting a small room. And if you take that light bulb, and if you got an old light bulb in the house that you're not using, I want you to go outside, break that light bulb on the ground, and look at what is used to create that light. Because there's electricity that's going into the bulb, causing metal to heat up to make it bright to light a room. But it's very, very hot, and the shield of the light bulb is protecting you from the heat. But it's really a heater, not a light bulb. Now, when you break that light bulb and you look at that metal inside the bulb, guess what that metal looks like? And for you to understand where I'm coming from, for the sake of argument, there is an Egyptian ankh inside a conventional light bulb. And if you believe that the Freemasons built America and established the 13 colonies, and anybody involved in business or had power, judges and people of the state and Congress and people, high-ranking officers and doctors and all these people are Masons, then they still withhold a lot of information that's been passed down through generations from those times. So it makes sense that an ankh would be inside a light bulb, and they use that to create light for a room. The same metal that is, because they use different types of metal for that metal inside the light bulb. It's very small. But if you had an ankh in front of you, a real Egyptian ankh has the same metal on it from those times. I know that we like jewelry and stuff like that, and we so far from the motherland in the history, they don't educate us on this stuff. So when you go buy a ankh from the jewelry store or somebody who makes jewelry at a convention or a market or outdoor market, a flea market or whatever, you're not getting a real ing, you're just getting jewelry. But a real Egyptian ing has 4 or 5 different metals on it, and the thing is used for different purposes. So what we did all these years later is shrunk it and used it to create light for a light bulb. Now, GE is one of those number one brands, like Thomas Edison, GE. They all have their ties in people receiving knowledge that everybody is not privy to, Leonardo da Vinci spent a lot of time in Egypt, and then when he came back home and started doing his drawings, they thought he was a genius. You see what I'm saying? So, on that note, I just want to say thanks for hanging out, and peace and hair grease. It's been real. We had a good talk. It was a good, how they like to say, it was a good build. Well, I think it takes two people to build, but we build back and forth from the chat room. You know what I'm saying? And now I'm going to be under the microscope, because anybody who can create graphics, create film, create music, and have an influence, you're already on record. You know what I'm saying? It's all good. Thank you. It's good to see you again, Sage Wizzle and Marquise and everybody, of course. And if you haven't saw this, please do catch Kennedy's speech at the beginning. It's very, very significant and very, very relevant. Yeah, and you have a great day too. It's 4:14 here. So take care. Peace and hair grease.
Lock it down, cause we doing it live. Plus we got more in deck than the Enterprise. And if I lay right there in between your thighs, you will see another episode of Deep Space Nine. Text message me on the video screen. Get that miss on the wireless. Never had to buy it, please. Satellite system, CRV. We can fold up, remove the two back seats. Just pass me